Hello, happy January. I'm actually coming in a little bit late for my December wrap up, but with the holidays, etc., we're just doing it now. So today I am going to share a little bit about the knitting projects that I completed in December and what I'm working on right now. And then I will do a reading wrap up of the books I read in December. And then I am going to do my top 10 books of 2024 with a couple of honorable mentions. So my knitting is going to be a little more brief today. I only have a couple projects. First of all, I just wanted to report that I did finish my Christmas knitting, the gift knitting that I was showing you last time. The hat, which is a Musselburgh hat, was given to my son, and it was in Timberwolves colors. I toyed with putting a Timberwolves patch on the front, but I couldn't quite figure out a way to attach that without, kind of wrecking the integrity of the knit. So here's a picture of the finished hat on my son's head. And then the other project that I was working on that I did complete was a pair of socks, and they were for my brother. And the yarn that I used was called Drag Race. And John is a huge fan of the show Drag Race, and he watches like all the drag races on TV for all the different countries and international and all of that. I don't think the yarn had to do with the show. I think it had to do with actual drag racing, and you can kind of see in the picture the way that the green kind of made pathways. So whatever, they're fun and they turned out. So I am now working on the Advent project. I had done an opening last time of my Advent box with all of the packages of yarn inside, and my plan was to make what's called the habitation throw, and I'm working on it. So here is the bag that I've been using to keep it in. It's going to outgrow this bag very soon. I love this one. I got it at the Wisconsin Sheep and Wool Festival a couple of years ago, and I don't recall who the maker was, and they did not put a tag inside, but I love it. So if you're the maker, thank you very much. And again, the Advent project has to do with using little skeins of yarn that you get every day in December before Christmas. So 24 small skeins, and I'm making a blanket. So this is as far as I have gotten. I will spread this out as best I can so you can see it on camera. But here it is. It started on the bottom there with that kind of periwinkle blue, and then it's sort of going through a reverse rainbow order, I guess, from blue to green, and then my next colors are going to be more yellow tinged, into orange and then red. I don't think it ever comes back around to purple. I think there's some purples that are mixed in. But anyway, it's taking me longer than I expected to knit each color. So this project's going to take me a few months, but I'm having fun with it, and I will keep you updated. So this is the habitation throw, and it's very easy to knit and very relaxing to just work on, while I'm watching TV or waiting for things to get done, things like that. And then the other project that I'm working on currently is, it's a hat, and this also is in team colors, and this is for my son Luke's birthday coming up January 17th. It is not going to get done in time, and he's fine with that. But his team that he wanted something knit for the colors of is Arsenal, the football team from London. And so also known as soccer in the United States, okay? And their colors are red and white. And so I found some red and white yarn online, and I thought this would work really well. but it looks a little bit like Where's Waldo? It's kind of fun, but I decided what I'm going to do. It's the same style hat. It's the Musselburgh hat where you tuck one end inside of the other. So this is going to be the lining, and the outside is going to be red, just solid red, and then the brim around it is going to be white. So it won't be quite so candy cane, Where's Waldo? It's kind of fun, isn't it? So those are the things I am currently working on for knitting. And I think that's all I have to say about knitting today. I am back for the December wrap-up of reading. I completed 5 books in December, which is a little fewer than what I normally would do, but December's busy. And I also had a couple of books that I did not complete in December that I'm going to continue to work on. So I will describe these books for you a little bit. There's a couple that actually made it into my top 10 list, so I won't say as much about them now. I will describe them more and give my review in the top 10 list, but just so you know, here are the 5 that I completed. The first one was called A Dangerous Place, and it is number 11 in the Maisie Dobbs series by Jacqueline Winspear. I mentioned last month that I had completed a book from that series. I only read them once every few months, so it's unusual for me to have read 2 back-to-back, but they're just wonderful fillers in my reading life when I don't have something else, you know, pending at the library or on my reading list, and I just want to fill in with something. They're just lovely books. Anyway, this one is, not, as I said, number 11 in the series, and it's sort of a transitional book. Maisie Dobbs in the previous book had ended up in India, and for some self-reflection and just to, you know, go and learn. And by the time this book comes around, it's a couple of years later, and she is now in Gibraltar on her way back to London, but she's taking her time because she has some soul seeking to do. And I won't explain all of that because I don't want to spoil it, but she again finds herself in a situation where there's things going on that she's trying to sort out and figure out the mystery, because that's what she does. She's a private investigator. So these books are wonderful historical fiction, mysteries. I love Maisie. She's just a sharp and lovely character. So Maisie Dobbs, number 11, A Dangerous Place. The next book that I completed this month was Lovely One, the memoir of Ketanji Brown Jackson, the Supreme Court Justice. And it's long. I listened to it in the car over many, many trips. It was 16 hours long, I believe. But I think it's worth the investment. She is just such a driven person, a person of deep integrity, a brilliant person, and just very inspiring to read her story of how she, you know, went from being a young person living in Florida, kind of lower middle class, I would say, and, you know, just one generation separated from Jim Crow, which her parents were in that generation where there was even more oppression than what Black people experience now. And for her to be the first Black woman on the Supreme Court is just such an inspiring story. So if you've got time and an interest in that kind of a memoir, it's highly recommended. And then my third book that I read in December was also a memoir, much shorter, much more closely focused on a person's experience of grief. And it was called H is for Hawk, and it's by Helen MacDonald. Sorry about that, my memory got full, so I'm gonna continue now. So H is for Hawk by Helen MacDonald, narrates her experience of grief after her father died, and does so through her experience of actually training a goshawk, which you've probably seen falconers at the Renaissance Fair or the zoo or wherever. It is a fascinating process. And so to hear her talk about this, the intensity of that, of getting to know this majestic animal and training it alongside her story of grief is really powerful. So H is for Hawk by Helen MacDonald. The final two are the ones that did make it to my top 10, so I will briefly talk about them now. The first one is Tell Me Everything by Elizabeth Strout, and it's the most recent book from her Olive Kitteridge, Lucy Barton universe, which is so delightful. So I will include my further thoughts about that. And then Greta and Valdin is the other book that I completed in December that also made it into the top 10. And that is the first published book by the New Zealand author. I don't have her name in front of me. Oh my gosh. I will include that in the next segment. Anyway, it's delightful. And obviously I made it into my top 10. So the other two books that I worked on in December are things that I mentioned in my last episode. And one was this book, Comfort and Joy, which is a wonderful companion for the Advent and Christmas season. I made it through 3 of the 6 weeks. Here's my little bookmarker, and decided to save it for next year to complete, because just the way things go, I don't get everything read every single day. And I think there's plenty of material in here to cover next Advent. It's wonderful. It goes through and reflects on scripture. There are prayers and poems. There are recipes. I think it is geared towards somebody a generation younger than me. I think I would have appreciated it more when I had young kids, but it is excellent. So if you're looking for a companion for Advent, Comfort and Joy is a lovely one. And the other Christmas reading that I did is this book, Christmas Days, which is 12 stories and recipes from Jeanette Winterston. And I love this cover. Isn't it beautiful? This is a library book that I am going to return because I made it through about 100 pages of this. And again, it's just such beautiful seasonal writing that I'm going to keep it on my radar for next December to continue to read, because it's just sharp story. I mean, she's so sharp and she's funny, and the recipes are amazing. So it's a good read for December. I do recommend. So those are my December reads. Let's see here. I guess I'll give a little bit about my plans for January. I did receive a gift book this year from my son, Micah, Women and the Piano. And it is the story, it is a history in 50 lives, as it said, and I've only read the introduction right now, but I'm really looking forward to delving in. As somebody who plays the piano, not as expertly as I once did, but I still have a deep appreciation for the instrument and for those who play it. And women have not gotten a lot of attention as musicians and composers, so this is a good thing, I think, to delve into. So I'll give you a report on that next month. And I won't tell you what I've already read, even though I've already read a couple things in January. I'll wait till my January wrap up for that. So, my top 10. Ready? Okay, so number 10 was Greta and Valdin. It is so delightful. It is 2 siblings, a brother and sister, who live in New Zealand, and they live together. And they're just navigating young adulthood. Both of them happen to be gay, and they're both super smart. And so the way that they describe their lives and their struggles and the things that they're going through is hilarious, but also really sharp. So I laughed, I loved it. It's definitely worth getting onto the top 10, and I hope you'll get a chance to read it. It's a wonderful little book. Number 9 is Martyr, which I read in November, and I did describe it a little bit at that time. It is the story of Cyrus Shams, an Iranian immigrant who is the son of Iranian immigrants. He lost his mother when he was a baby, and his whole life seems to be, shadowed by that, of course. But he also has just kind of this dark fantasy about martyrdom, and the book kind of details how he explores that and thinks about that. He's also a drug addict and just not a very, very nice person. So at first I was like, I don't know if I want to read this, but it made it into my top 10. So it's a great book. And the way that it evolves and resolves is so powerful. So I do recommend Martyr. I think it was definitely nominated for the National Book Award and for some other awards. So it's a very, very good book. Number 8 in my top 10 is a small book called Held. And it was nominated for the Booker Prize, and it was very polarizing. A lot of people loved it like I did, and a lot of people just had a hard time with it. It's by Ann Michaels, and I just love the way she explored themes of faith and philosophy. There's a photographer in the story, and my dad was a photographer who had a dark room in the house, and so I kind of related to some of that piece of it as well. And so the story is told over the course of a couple of centuries, and it's only like less than 200 pages long. It's a short book, and the pieces are kind of like a puzzle, which I also love, and I think that's what turned some people off, was that it's hard to follow in some ways, but I enjoyed that. So Held, that was number 8 for me. Number 7 was the book Enter Ghost, which was nominated for the Women's Prize, and in my opinion should have won the Women's Prize for fiction. It follows a woman who is from England, but she is British Palestinian, and she goes back to Israel to recover from a breakup and connect with her family. And in the midst of that time in her life, she is recruited, she's an actress, and she's recruited to be in a production of Hamlet. And the people that she meets through that, and the way the story parallels a little bit of what's been going on in the Middle East lately makes it feel very prescient. And the scene where the title comes from, Enter Ghost, is a scene in Hamlet, and that was, to me, was just electrifying, the way that she used that, the author used that in the book. So in my opinion, the best book that was on the Women's Prize list, and I highly recommend Enter Ghost. Number 6 was Tell Me Everything by Elizabeth Strout, that I did just complete in December. And as I said, this is from the Olive Kitteridge / Lucy Barton universe. And there's actually a chart in the book that shows all of the characters and the books that they appear in. And if you have not read any of these books by Elizabeth Strout, I highly recommend that you start with Olive Kitteridge and just go through. The way Elizabeth Strout writes about human beings is so touching to me. I mean, they're very plain spoken, but at the same time, they're just good people. And yes, they run into some terrible things in their lives, but the way that she describes people walking through life, and this one, kind of focuses on people that are like my age. So that was also very relatable and refreshing. And yeah, Elizabeth Strout, she is just a gem. So I recommend reading her books. Number 5 for me this year was the book Enlightenment by Sarah Perry. And follows the lives of two very different people, an older gay man, and his name is Thomas Hart, and a young woman named Grace Macaulay, and they're best friends. And their friendship goes through all kinds of trials. So the book describes that friendship, but it also is just a beautiful exploration of themes of faith and love and astronomy, and the intersection of faith and science. And I was recommending this book to a friend, and I said, I feel like this author, Sarah Perry, is a descendant of Madeleine L'Engle. The way that she uses these themes and just kind of pulls you in to the story is just lovely. There's a ghost, there are comets, it's wonderful. So number 5, Enlightenment by Sarah Perry. Number 4, I have to go to my other page in my book here. Number 4, Let Us Descend by Jesmyn Ward. I first was introduced to Jesmyn Ward by her book Sing Unburied Sing, which is a beautiful, painful odyssey. And this book is another book in that kind of vein, and it tells the story of enslaved teenager named Annis, as she is separated from her mother, where they were enslaved on the Carolina coast, and then she is transported by slave traders on foot. I mean, the slave traders are in a wagon, of course, but she has to walk the entire way to New Orleans, so 1,000 miles. And, just the awful pain of that. And she's a young girl, but some of her compatriots on this walk were older and infirm, and there were just terrible things that they had to endure. And along the way, she experiences spirits who come and talk to her and guide her through this. But she also draws upon, the love of her mother and her memories, and the relationship she has along the way. But the way Jesmyn Ward writes is just poetic and soulful and so rich. So number 4, Let Us Descend. Number 3, North Woods by Daniel Mason. It's historical fiction, and each of the chapters is a short story that describes this house in Massachusetts. And it starts way back in colonial times, when the house is just a hut that's built by some people that are fleeing a Puritan colony. They don't want to deal with all of the rules, etc. And so they flee and they build their own house in the wilderness. And over the years, this house, is built upon, it finally becomes kind of a stately manor. It's this yellow house in Massachusetts. And each of the owners has a unique tale to tell. And the book sort of explores the intersection of the natural world with humans and the ways that we leave our mark and our legacy, and also the way that we are impacted by the natural world. So it's, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to say about it. It's just that it's a gorgeous novel, and it's number 3 for me, so obviously I highly recommend it. Number 2, I described this in last month's episode, and that is Orbital by Samantha Harvey. And a couple of people responded to that video and got the book and said that they loved it too. So it again is the telling of a satellite that goes around. Oh, it's not a satellite. what's the word I want? A space station. There we go. It's a space station that is orbiting around the world, and I believe it's over the course of 24 hours, and the people in the space station are from all over the world, and it reflects their stories of how they became astronauts and their perceptions and what they see when they're looking out into space and when they're looking at our world. Yeah, it's rich. It is just gorgeous. And my number one read for 2024 was James by Percival Everett. It was just such a powerful way to understand the story of an enslaved person, and the way that he expanded on the novel Huckleberry Finn through the eyes of James, who was Jim in Huckleberry Finn, just taught me so much. I mean, I've read a lot of slave narratives and a lot of books, like Jessamine Ward and others, describing the experience of being enslaved. But this was really powerful. And the way that Percival Everett brought in some elements of kind of magical realism made the story so engaging and interesting. So yeah, those are my top 10 of the year, and I hope that you'll share with me what your favorite books were of 2024, what you're reading now, what you're working on now, if you're knitting or crocheting or anything like that. Please leave a comment or contact me at thedicast@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. Yeah, I think that's it for this month's episode. So thanks for watching. I look forward to talking to you again, and have a wonderful rest of your month. Bye-bye.